On this week's episode of Chasing the Natty, Jared and I look ahead to week 2 in our preview where we will discuss big game matchups and possible high-scoring games. All this and more on Chasing the Natty.
Look downfield and circus one-handed catch is made.
Jones goes to the end zone. Oh, what a catch! Devontae Smith. Touchdown, Alabama.
Watch out for Mr. Robinson. This kid is going to be special and is already flashing.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college football fantasy podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody. It is I've been having this problem all week where I've been completely losing track of what day of the week it is. Thank you, Labor Day. It is Tuesday night, and it is a lovely Tuesday night that is storming, ravaging storms outside my window at the moment. But my name is Jared Palmgren. I am the host of the Chasing the Natty podcast, and on the other side of me is always the dependable and reliable Mr. Xavier Hood. How you doing tonight, Xavier?
Glad to be back.
Xavier's smiling because he knows that we had to reschedule yesterday and then still had something come up.
Yeah.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good. Had a good time with Justin yesterday. Recapped week 1. Love Justin. I'm sure we'll have him back on the show at one point. You guys seem to like that pretty well. But even still, Xavier, you were not here yesterday. So I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of time to give your thoughts on week 1, even though this is a week 2 preview show. We've been going back and forth about all different kind of games and stuff like that. So I want people to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but don't want to take up too much of our time. I'll try to break it down in probably like 3 parts. I'll try to hit the bigger game. Of course, as you all know, we are Georgia diehards, so I'll get to that first. The Georgia defense showed up, and I'm happy that we won the game, and it's very exciting, and it's great to look forward to it for the future of our season and possible playoff hopes. And after seeing what Bama did to Miami, I'm glad we don't have to see them for a while. If we fortunately make it to the SEC championship, we'll have time to develop. But on the other side of the ball, Clemson's defense was also strong as well, too. So it was a great battle between the trenches, but ultimately we came through. We were able to run the ball a little bit more effectively than them, move the ball down the field, and get in the field goal range for our one offensive score of the game. But Chris Smith came up with the interception, so that was great. Now, for the fantasy side of this, I don't want people to panic or take too much into these offenses. Just look at these offenses and say, wow, Clemson's offense is terrible or invisible. I've seen so many quotes from different people, and also Georgia saying, oh, this is supposed to be a brand new offense. It's just a hard thing to say, because now if you put Georgia and Clemson versus anybody else in the country aside from Alabama, their offense and defense are going to perform a lot better than what they do, what everybody else did over the weekend, what they did against each other. You're putting probably the second and third best defense in the nation that I would describe. I really want to give us the edge over Bama, but I know I can't do that just yet. But I'll put us at 2 and Clemson at 3. And you're putting them against, offenses that are kind of, in a new place right now. They're not like Clemson's not at the helm of Trevor Lawrence anymore. Georgia's finally under J.C. Daniels with a lot of receivers being hurt or not being able to play. So it was just at a disadvantage. But I think for the rest of the season, it's okay to have investments in these offenses. Don't jump off ship yet. Don't, make big claims that DJ might, fall or be bad or this and that, or, JT's not the quarterback we thought. These are still great players, and they have a long season ahead of them to get things clicking.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add in here a little bit. And I talked about this a little bit with Justin yesterday. But again, when you go back and look at this game, and like in hindsight, we should have expected a low scoring affair. I don't think anybody was expecting that low of scoring. But the matchups just weren't there for these offenses to be explosive yesterday. These were 2 of the best defensive lines in the country. They were going to break through these young, raw offensive lines both teams had. And both offenses just didn't go in with a game plan of expecting to be able to make big passing plays, because they knew that these defensive fronts were going to get into the backfield and those plays would fall apart so quickly before the receivers ever had a chance to separate. So Now, that doesn't excuse Clemson for never changing their plan until the fourth quarter to throw over the middle because Georgia was blitzing their linebackers half the time. But even still, like, I'm with you, Xavier. I don't think anybody should be panicking over either one of these offenses. I literally had somebody ask me the other day, like, should I drop DJ? I'm like, no. Why?
No.
Why? No. Clemson is still a top 5 team in this country, regardless of what they may have looked like on Saturday. These were just bad, unfortunate matchups that just happened to hit a major weakness on Clemson's side, even on Georgia a little bit. Like, again, Georgia had a raw O-line that just happened to perform a little bit better than Clemson's did. I'm sure Georgia was freaking out about the exact same thing happening to them that happened to Clemson on Saturday night. Yeah, again, I'm just kind of expanding on real what you were saying. What are your other thoughts from this past weekend, Xavier?
Yeah, I want to talk about transfer running backs or just running backs in general. I think it was a great weekend for running backs, or just a great week for running backs. I'll start off with Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State.
Of course, you start with him.
I have to start with him. I won't harp on it too much, for our fantasy, for our Kings Classic draft. But I want to shine light on Michigan State and well, it looks like a Mel Tucker revolution. It could possibly be. You took down a Northwestern program, which was very highly rated last year. A very favorable program that was on the up and up, and now it looks like it's Michigan State's turn, and they're going to be led by Kenneth Walker. And they have a few good pieces on that offense as well too, with the receiving and at QB as well too. So it is very interesting to see. And then I'll go and touch on a few more transfers that may not have had the best of weekends, but I expect we'll get into our week 2 previews. But I'll go with UNC and Ty Chandler. It was a disappointment to say against Virginia Tech. UNC was expected to come in there and not per se dominate, but I was expecting to see a little bit more. The offensive line was returning a lot of starters, and they looked like a bunch of freshmen out there. The offensive line was horrendous. Somehow had no room to operate. The run game couldn't get going, but I also felt like they didn't use the run game enough. It felt like they gave up on it too quick. You couldn't get Ty Chandler in a rhythm because you were always trying to rely on Josh Downs to bail you out, which he did for. I guess, did he have one touchdown that game? I forgot the score of that game. I just remember.
Yes, Downs did have a touchdown that game, and also you kind of touched on them abandoning the run too early. Ty Chandler was averaging 6.6 yards per carry, and he only had 10 carries that game.
Yeah, I think majority of those came in I know a few came in the first, but majority of those came in the fourth was when I saw them come back because they were trying to use forgot the other running back's name. I think it's Davies or something
DJ Jones.
DJ Jones. That's where I'm getting that confused. But yeah, DJ Jones. A lot of people thought he was looking like the better back. I'm just not too sold on that. He had a few big runs, but it was just circumstance. I feel like Ty Chandler with more opportunity, which I feel like against Georgia State this upcoming week, look a lot better. Now I will say I am concerned about Oklahoma because a lot of the big talk, even on my side, was I was a big Eric Gray supporter, and he got the starting back role. But it just didn't work out for a while. Tulane had a really good game plan against Oklahoma for their first week. The game was moved from Tulane to Norman, Oklahoma. So now things had to change. It's no longer their home field. But Tulane looked like a really good football team out there, and they played their hearts out and was able to go back and forth with Oklahoma for as long as they could. And they were able to, to stop Eric Gray on a couple of drives. Kennedy Brooks, finally they relied on their old back and who knew the system a little bit more, and he was able to sustain a few drives as well and get some goal line carries. But it's just interesting about how the Oklahoma offense is going to look. Now, I will say the Oklahoma defense, might be a little bit overrated from what people were saying last season when they beat Florida in a few other games they had during the season. But that's neither here nor there. We'll see what the future holds for them. And then I guess I'll touch on one more game that I was impressed with, Notre Dame and Florida State. I think that was probably the second best game of the weekend. And if I had no bias,
what was the first?
I would say Georgia Clemson as always.
Okay, fair.
But I was going to put that aside and say if I had no bias, I would say Florida State and Notre Dame was the best weekend by far, with the back and forth. Jack Cohn, he looked incredible for Wisconsin transfer. I was just surprised to say it. I was like, wow, you actually look like you can actually be a competent quarterback for this Notre Dame team with Ian Book removed. And you don't have to throw in Tyler Buckner, the freshman that a lot of people are hoping for the future. And Kyron Williams, he started off a little bit slow, but then he got really going late.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chris Tyree looked great as well too. But it still looks like Kyron Williams, despite my prediction that maybe Kyron Williams will take a dip this year, we'll see. Because Chris Tyree may still need some more reps to get used to in that system and having a 2-back system, which I think they can. But Kyron Williams is definitely the best back on that team, probably one of the best players. There is another guy on there that I will touch on.
I'll add in a little tidbit here. Credit to Dynasty PJ on this one. He put out a Twitter thread of all these running back by committees, quote unquote, and the snap counts for each of those. And Kyron Williams, I believe, out of 71 offensive snaps for Notre Dame, had 53, and Chris Tyree had 18. So I don't think we need to worry about Chris Tyree coming in and taking over just yet.
No, I wasn't worried about taking over, but I feel like Chris Tyree showed enough talent to where his snaps can definitely increase. So that might, take a dip in Kyron. Mm-hmm. And then Michael Mayer, who I had as my tight end one personally in my rankings. I love Michael Mayer. I love the story behind him where they call him Baby Gronk on campus. And I saw the talent there from last season. And I thought, wow, if he's one of their leading, like I think we mentioned earlier in an earlier podcast that he was tied for their leading receptions last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, well, their leading receiver is gone, graduated and has gone off to better things, not the NFL, sadly, but I feel like it's Michael Mayer's time. And I'm not saying he could be a Kyle Pitts. I don't think we're ever going to see a Kyle Pitts, but I think this is going to be a very productive tight end for Notre Dame.
Oh, very much so. And he would have had an even bigger day yesterday if he didn't have 3 drops. Cleans those up. Yeah. And that's not me knocking on him or anything. Again, I love Michael Mayer. You say that we're not going to have Kyle Pitts again this year, and I agree we're not going to have Kyle Pitts, but Michael Mayer, I think it might be the closest thing we get. Him and Cole Turner and Greg Dulcich, I think, are very much those 3 major tight ends right now that we're going to be keeping an eye on. But again, Michael Mayer could have even had a bigger game than he did this past weekend.
Yeah, and then I'll go to the other side of that game. Florida State surprised the hell out of me. I'm not a big Florida State, fan or supporter, care too much about Florida State. They were once a prominent program. Now they're, in the previous years, they've been in the bottom of the barrel ACC. Teams used to look forward to playing Florida State, but now it looks like the script has been flipped. Florida State might be onto something. Now I will say, it did take a couple of transfers, one UGA transfer, Jermaine Johnson, get a couple of sacks on Jax Cone. So I will take a little bit of credit for that we gave.
You'll take credit for that.
I'll take credit. I'll give Notre Dame the credit that they were able to, get a transfer like that we've developed and brought up after he transferred to us, from junior college, and we got him to the prominence that he is, because I think he's going to be a very productive linebacker and a future NFL player in that at the next level. But I'll take on the offense. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball, since this is a fantasy football podcast. Oh man, there is a QB battle. It's always been one, but now it's even more of a debate where Mike Norvell has to make a big decision of who he wants to start the next game, because towards the end, Mackenzie Milton, the biggest story of the night, had the hot hand and looked like the better quarterback. Jordan Travis, he had 3 interceptions, but he was the one putting up a majority of those points, to where him and Jayshon Corbin, a lot of those young receivers, Florida State is low-key putting something together where, maybe in a couple of years they may come back to prominence, probably even faster than Miami, but I'll leave that for another show.
Yeah, and you and I were talking that entire game, and I got heavily invested into that game especially once Mackenzie Milton came out. Like I said on the pod yesterday, there was just a different atmosphere in that game when Mackenzie Milton got on that field. I've never seen a fan base just truly embrace a player like that the moment they step out onto the field. In addition to that, though, I have to admit that Jordan Travis had the better day yesterday out of those 2. Now, again, Mackenzie Milton was there to bring the actually, I got to be careful how I say that and everything. Jordan Travis had the better fantasy day. He did throw 2 interceptions, 2 bad interceptions. Although
I thought it was 3.
Was it 3?
I think it was 3.
But even still, like Mackenzie Milton, while everything felt better when he was out there, like when you really kind of broke it down, he didn't add like a massive spark to that offense. A lot of it had to do with the fact that Jashawn Corbin was playing out of his freaking mind in that fourth quarter. But even so, in addition to that, like, you're right, Norvell has a massive decision this upcoming week, and like, I don't blame him for starting Travis in this last game, even though Travis didn't play that well, mostly because of the fact that Travis does have the better legs. And that O-line is still bad. Like they're still going to get pressure, and you don't want somebody like Mackenzie Milton, who just came back from a surgery on an injury where people thought at best he might be able to walk again someday, but now he's back out there playing football. But you don't want to play with fire like that. So, yeah, those are my kind of thoughts on the game. Anything else you want to touch on before we start going on to week 2?
In our home league, I beat you, so I was pretty happy about that. I will.
It was not fair.
I will rub it in. I will rub it in for that one. Our home league. That's where I'm the most competitive.
Yeah,
I like facing all of our friends, and I like winning. I do have a tall test this upcoming week, but it was a fun week. I can't. Jared made some moves on the waiver wire that made me kind of mad because I wanted to get a little bit better. So it will be fun to see in like the next 3 weeks.
I'm letting you know right now. You picked up Kenneth Walker. I had Kenneth Walker as my number 1 waiver wire priority.
I had Tanner Mordecai as my number 1.
And I switched it at the last second because I'm like, I'm losing Preston Hutchinson to my injury reserve this week. And I'm like, I have to pick up a quarterback. And Tanner Morgan was by far the best quarterback still on our waiver wire. By the way, we play in a very, very, like, we play in a league of, like, our home league's 4 people. So there's a ton of great talent still on the waiver wire. If y'all are wondering, like, oh my god, you guys are experts, and somehow Tanner Mordecai is still on the waiver, like, no. Like, there's a lot of good players still on the waiver wire in our league.
These are like 2 other good friends from college. So we just have fun, and then we have our other leagues on the side that it's a lot deeper. But yeah.
Oh yeah, but even so, I'm glad I get to play you twice more this year because there's still a possibility for me to still have a winning record against you by the end of the year.
Yeah, I lost Muhammad Ibrahim, so that sucks. But it's all right.
You got Kenneth Walker. What are you crying about?
I did, but I had Bijan and Muhammad. It was going to be great, but it's
now you have Bijan and Kenneth.
Yeah, I know.
You got scared this weekend though. You thought you were going to lose Bijan in the same week.
Oh my god! All right. We have a podcast.
We got to move on. But
we have to get to week 2. We have to think about the future.
We do have to think about the future, and nowhere better to start than probably this weekend's. Probably, actually, I don't even know if we can call this the biggest game this weekend anymore because we got another top 10 matchup that just came out of nowhere because, those teams are both top 10 now. But we'll start with like the big one before the season started. And that's number 12, Oregon at number 3, Ohio State. This is the big noon kickoff on Fox. Once again, Fox, screw you for taking the weekend's biggest games and putting them at the beginning of the day when nobody wants to really be thinking about big games yet. So yeah, even still, like I said, before the season started, this was the matchup everybody was circling and saying that's a likely Pac-12 champion going up against a likely Big 12 or Big 10 champion. So this is likely a preview of the Rose Bowl. Unfortunately, last weekend we saw Kayvon Thibodeau go down in the Fresno State game. I am praying that it's like they're saying and that it's only just a sprain. He might be able to be back for this weekend. I'm really hoping that's the case because in a game like this, you want all the best players available in the game. And so, Xavier, what are your kind of thoughts on this game?
Yeah, you know what? I at the beginning of the year, even like back in April, our mindsets were like Ohio State, Oregon. It's going to be a great game because last year, even though Oregon only played like a few games, they were the Pac-12 championship and they won the Pac-12 championship, and they looked like the better football team in an up and coming program, and they had some great talent coming in from high school, and they had some great returning players as well. But now I'm just not sold on them after that Fresno State game. But also I'm not sold on Ohio State too. It's so weird. The 2 games that Ohio State versus Minnesota and Oregon versus Fresno State. Maybe I would just chalk it up as week 1, games and getting jitters out there because practice is practice. The games are the games. So now going into week 2, you've had the experience of playing in the actual football environment with a lot of fans now. So you have those expectations of knowing what to do. But neither team just and well, I'll say this. I'll speak on Ohio State first. Ohio State took a while to get started. I was kind of expecting Ohio State to have the game that Alabama kind of had, where you still have a lot of talent that's been experienced, like from the wide receiver position, and not so much as the running back position, but you had good talent back there. The only question mark really was the quarterback, and now it's CJ Stroud. And I thought it would be like, how Alabama just inserted Bryce Young with still the same old, not the same O-line, but still the great O-line that they have, the defense that they bolstered up, and all the weapons that they produced at Alabama. And you have Ohio State, which I had rated as the best wide receiver core probably in the nation.
Probably
and I thought
still
CJ
is.
Stroud probably still is, absolutely. And I thought CJ Stroud would just go in and automatically light it up. But obviously that was PJ Fleck drew up a great game plan, great game script to slow that down for a while, to where we didn't see that until probably like the second quarter. I think probably the first quarter we saw late. Maybe the second quarter is when they started kind of getting going. Then
Second half, definitely, though.
Yeah, second half definitely was things where things started to fly, but it was just more of like Minnesota's players started getting injured. Players, the more this energy shifted after Muhammad Ibrahim went down, so things just kind of got a little bit iffy, and it just didn't look like CJ Stroud had all the time in the world. Even though he made the perfect throws, it just felt like he wasn't under that much duress. So I like to see quarterbacks in different situations, and if it was an easy situation for you where you started out struggling, then after a while, like when things became more favorable for you, you kind of just like, all right, I don't have to try as hard or be all world. Then I have questions of like, all right, what happens if a team is as great as they are, plays all four quarters well? How are you going to adjust to adversity? Now on the other side, I just don't think Oregon has enough to do that. Now if Thibodeau comes back, that might shift the needle for that to where I'm a little bit more interested in again, and maybe give Oregon a chance. But they are a very young team. So it just leaves a lot to be desired, because Anthony Brown, even though I really think they have a good guy behind him, but I'll leave it up to Mario Cristobal to make that decision, because obviously I'm not a head coach or a football coach at all. But Anthony Brown's not the greatest passer, and you have a lot of weapons on that at wide receiver that you're just not using enough, in my personal opinion. So I think that's what they're going to need to use against the Ohio State game. So it will be interesting to see. I feel like it's going to end up to be one-sided for Ohio State really quickly.
See, I mean, Ohio State's favored by 14 points in this game for a reason. Like this isn't expected to be a relatively close game. Actually, yeah, it is 14 points. So I think it's actually the exact same spread that they had against Minnesota. So that should tell you a lot right there. But even still, I think, again, I have quite a few thoughts on this game. I think overall, you're going to see a better Ohio State team and a better Oregon team this weekend than you saw last weekend. I think both teams learned a lot from their games this past weekend. Both were in closer games than I think they were both expecting. Oregon especially, because Oregon jumped up to a pretty good lead in that Fresno State game. But then all of a sudden, Fresno State starts running 2-minute offense. They start scoring very quickly. Oregon realized they can't answer very quickly in a scenario like that. I think that's something that's going to define this upcoming game this Saturday, because I can see a scenario where Ohio State jumps out to a 2-touchdown lead, and then Oregon is suddenly in a situation where they have to pass. And Anthony Brown is not that guy. He's very athletic. This is a guy that if you are in a neck-and-neck game and you need to slow down the game, have him just make some long drives down the field, he's perfect for that. But if they fall behind and they need to start using these weapons like you're talking about, like Johnny Johnson, freshman Troy Franklin, all these guys they have on this roster, I would not be shocked especially if Anthony Brown has a turnover or two, I would not be shocked if we saw Butterfield or even Ty Thompson maybe enter in this game in the second half. I'm not going to make the call on who that backup quarterback is, because for everything I've heard, they're very close. And I wouldn't be shocked to see either of them go out there. But I wouldn't be, again, overall, I just wouldn't be shocked if I saw a second Oregon quarterback come in this game, especially if they fall behind early. So we'll go ahead and make our picks here for this game. I think we are both on the same page. I guess really the question is, does Ohio State cover?
I'll say yes. They cover the spread.
I'm going to say yes, they cover the spread because, once again, I just can't see Oregon at the moment being able to keep up with Ohio State, and I think they can easily fall behind by 2 or 3 scores, and the spread's only 14.5. So if Ohio State beats them by 2 touchdowns and a field goal, which feels very realistic, there's your covered spread. I'm going Ohio State taking the points.
Yeah. And we even talk about the running back room in Ohio State.
Oh, my God. Yeah, you're right. I totally missed that.
Yeah, but I think everybody's seen, from the talent that Maya Williams has showed, and Trevion Henderson, the 5-star freshman that everybody's been raving about for the past few months, that Ohio State is in a very comfortable place where they're at with their running backs. Now, it is a sad story for Master Teague. He felt like he was that next guy up after, J.K. and a lot of the other guys before him, that Master Teague was probably the one waiting his turn. And now he got outbeat by the talent. So
outbeat by the talent, injuries plaguing him.
Yeah,
I wish him the best. I'm sure he's. I wouldn't be surprised if Master Teague is at the epicenter of a major play for Ohio State down the road, even if he's not getting the full load of the carries. So we'll go ahead and move on to the other. Well, not the other, but the only top 10 matchup of the weekend, and that is so weird to say when you're talking about El Asico, Iowa versus Iowa State, the first time in history that this historic rivalry, in-state rivalry, is a top 25 matchup, let alone a top 10 matchup. This is going to be, I think, one of the craziest environments you will be seeing in college football this year. This is one of those games that is a definitive of college football. If you ever just want to see how crazy a rivalry can truly get between two schools you may not have really ever just thought about watching on casually on a given Saturday, but this is now the 4:30 ABC game, and I'm excited about this one. Again, I like Iowa State a lot. I know a lot of people are poo-pooing them for their performance against Northern Iowa this past weekend, but I encourage you, if you've never looked up the history between Iowa State and Northern Iowa, please do. Regardless of where those two are in classification, those games are always close. For some reason, Northern Iowa does their damnedest to make sure that they can ruin Iowa State's season as soon as they play them whenever they can. In addition to that, I've made the joke several times. I've made the joke on Twitter. Iowa State in their first game is almost never something to truly bet on, especially if you're trying to get them to cover in a game they're favored in or to cover the spread in a game that they're not. Iowa State tends to struggle in their first game. So I'm not buying too much into the whole, they only beat Northern Iowa by 6 points. No, Iowa State's still going to be a very well-coached team. They're still going to be a very good team this upcoming year. They're returning a lot of starters. Breece Hall, you can't count him out. Brock Purdy's playing his last year, so he's going to be trying to show out whenever he can. And again, this is not even all to say the stuff going on at Iowa. Iowa just came off of an absolute beatdown against Indiana, where now some people are misconstruing what happened in that game because everybody's seeing the box score and they say, 38-6, Iowa must have found their offense. No, 21 points. I forget, is it 14 or 21 points were scored off of pick sixes and just fumbles and everything. I think it was 2 pick sixes and a scoop and score, if I remember correctly.
I know Penix threw 3 interceptions. Fumbles, I don't know if
it might have been 14 direct points from pick sixes and 21 points off turnovers. So Iowa was just put into great situations during that game where they didn't have to go very far to score a lot of points. So I think Iowa is a team that has a lot of good pieces. I love Tyler Goodson. I have him on several of my fantasy leagues. He's a perfect low floor kind of running back where he's going to be getting 20-something carries a game. They got, what's his name? I forget their quarterback's name off the top of my head.
I think it's Petrus
Spencer.
Spencer.
Petrus, actually, I think his name is.
Petrus.
Spencer Petrus. They got him back there. I believe this is his second or third year starting for them.
They have tight end Sam Laporta.
I was about to bring up Sam Laporta. You bring up a few names here, Xavier, that you like in this game.
Oh, I mean, you've touched all the major names that I think I could think of for Iowa because that's really it for Iowa. I mean, it is interesting to see. Iowa has always, kind of predicated themselves as like, tight end U. So they're always going to, produce good tight ends. Maybe not in the past like year or two. Maybe I'm trying to think of 2 years ago if they put out anybody. But I know in the past they put out like, a TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, those type of guys.
George Kittle
As well too. So you have a lot of great talent coming out of there. Tyler Goodson, probably their most memorable running back that I can think of in recent memory. I know I'm still it's been a while, and I really haven't checked out Iowa for a while. It's been a slow climb for them, but I will give credit to their defense. The defense is really stout, and it is going to be interesting to see how they match up against Iowa State, because this is an interesting matchup in terms of like, this is a top 10 matchup. It feels weird saying that, as Iowa and Iowa State are a top 10.
I told you, it feels weird to say that.
Yeah, I really don't even want to say it. I don't want to consider it, but I know I have to. So it's going to be good for either program, whoever wins. But they're both great defensively. I know Iowa State is returning a lot, but it is the Big 12. And then Big 10, I don't know. It's just your preference of like, if you are going to, buy into the Iowa State, be actually having a good defense, or they're just facing Big 12 competition last year and their defense just looked better than all of them. Or
I'm going to tell you right
Iowa's Big 10 defense like legit.
I'm telling you right now, if Iowa State wins this, it'll be huge for them. They haven't won since 2014.
Oh.
So they're on a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5-game losing streak. They did not play last year because of COVID and everything. This is one of the big rivalries that was missed out on last year. Came back with a force. They're both top 10 this year.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see. I'll point out to probably the biggest matchup will be Breece Hall versus the defense. What is that going to look like? Is their defensive line good, or is their secondary good, or what are we going to see?
I think the run game for both of these teams is going to establish what kind of game we look at here, because you got Breece Hall versus Tyler Goodson. Like those are two great running backs that I think are going to be the focal points of this game. I think this could be a very low-scoring game. This game, the last 2 times they played, has been very low-scoring. In 2018, it was 13-3. In 2019, it was 18-17. Now in 2017, it was 44-41. But even still, I do think this is going to be kind of a low-scoring game, one of those kind of defensive slugfests. Would not be surprised if either team doesn't break 25. With all that being said, let's go ahead and make a pick on this game. So I went first last time. I said Ohio State. Xavier, I'll let you go first here. Iowa or Iowa State?
I'm going to go with Iowa.
All right.
I will go with Iowa. I believe they're ranked 10, so that would be the upset, right?
10, yes. And Iowa State is also favored by 4.5 points, I believe.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to take the opposite. Again, I picked Iowa State to win the Big 12 this year for a reason. I do believe in this team. I believe in a lot of the seniors and everything that they brought back for this year. Iowa State's absolutely going to be one of these programs that has benefited a ton from the fact that their team, they can basically bring back their entire team from last year. They didn't lose many great pieces off of that team that went in and won the Fiesta Bowl for the first time. So I think Iowa State is hungry this year. I think they're once again trying to prove a lot of doubters wrong, who once again see them struggle in the first game, write them off, and they're like, all right, what a better way to start what a better way to prove everybody wrong than to go in and beat our in-state rival for the first time in 7 years in a top 10 matchup. So I think Iowa State is I think they'll be the more motivated team coming into this weekend. I think they pull off the W on Saturday. So those are the two big matchups. Everything else here we're going to run through a little bit more quickly. These are kind of like this slate. I was talking to Xavier beforehand. Man, this slate feels, I'm trying to find a kind word to describe this slate of games. It's just week 1 was incredible with the matchups that we were given, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of great games that we don't see coming this weekend, but we're just looking at it from a glance. It's definitely like more of a breather this week of like, alrighty, we got the high of week 1. Let's settle in with week 2 before we get into real like in conference games and stuff like that. So the first,
I think one word I was gonna say. I think one word to describe this week would either be like vanilla or mundane. Just like it's just
I like
you know, it's
vanilla
just
better.
how
Mundane
I
feels
like
a little mean.
yeah, mundane is definitely meaner. I feel like it's more critical, but vanilla just feels like people still like vanilla ice cream, but you still add your toppings and stuff. So I
You're
guess
right.
Ohio State and Iowa, there will be those two little sprinkles that you have, but that's it.
Iowa State or El Asico, and then Oregon and Iowa State, they're just sprinkles. You're not even gonna
Yeah,
you're not even gonna give it the like luxury of being like chocolate sauce or something like that.
Nah, can't. Maybe you know what? If we come back, during the Oregon and Ohio State game, I'll tweet out randomly. I'm like, all right, Jared, this game deserves the chocolate sauce. I'll tweet it out.
Xavier, I am looking so forward to that. Please, either one of these big matchups, if they're a close or great game, please tweet out that it was the chocolate sauce.
It was definitely the chocolate sauce.
Only listeners to this podcast will know what the hell you are talking about.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we'll move on. We got some intriguing out of conference matchups this weekend. First one I want to talk about here is a noon game on ESPN. It's Pittsburgh at Tennessee. Tennessee placed against Bowling Green last week, and there's a lot of basically the way I'm talking is how everybody kind of talks about Tennessee right now, where it's like, yeah, it looks so good, and then not so good, and then there were times last week, as if you were a Tennessee fan, you watched the game and you said, alrighty, I see we can make big plays like that, but also, why is my quarterback going 8 incomplete passes in a row? Why is my quarterback scrambling for his life and look like he doesn't know what he is doing? Why are we favored by 35 points in this game, but also it feels like we can't score on one of the worst defenses for a good period of time in this game? It was a very, I'd say, confusing game for Tennessee fans, where it's like you got glimpses of something greater. You're saying, alrighty, I can see the potential, but man, does it feel like we're just missing some pieces here. What do you think, Xavier?
Yeah, I completely agree. I have no idea how to interpret or, even fathom what the Tennessee offense is truly going to look like. I couldn't get a good gauge with the Bowling Green game. I was just like, okay, Joe Milton, caught a couple of minutes in probably that first half, and I was like, okay, it's pretty good for Tennessee. You've gone from Garen Tannenbaum, the bad man is finally gone. Tennessee fans, Mr. Pick and fumble prone himself is gone, but Joe Milton, your starting quarterback, he started out really hot, showing a lot of great rushing ability and upside, and was hitting a few passes too for some of those receivers. And then the running backs, even I think it was Jabari Small, and you have to remind me about the second back.
Tyon Evans.
They looked pretty good, and then everything fell flat. Probably like close to halftime, and then after the half, everything just fell flat. And I feel like they couldn't put it all together, because I think at the end of that game, Joe Milton threw for like less than 150 yards.
I can look it up for you real quick.
There was a crazy stat to where it was like either his completion percentage started out really well and then it dropped off drastically, or he just ended up not throwing for as much as we thought, for people that tuned in.
I'm going to say that again because ESPN sucks with their ads.
Yeah.
He threw for 140 yards.
Yeah, he threw for 140 yards, and that's against Bowling Green. So it's really hard to gauge of like what can you truly do, especially when you get back to the SEC. 140 yards against an out-of-conference opponent, especially a lower-level team, is not going to cut it. Like, they're going to be more experienced defenses. You're going to have less time in the pocket. DBs are going to be better. Your receivers aren't going to be open. You're going to have to make plays on your own. And if you can barely do that against Bowling Green, it's going to be interesting. So, and then I'll let you go to the other side of Pittsburgh, and we'll talk about them a little bit.
So I think Pittsburgh's an incredibly well-coached team. Now, I think they're very solidly middle of the pack for ACC. This is a team, I think, there's somebody out there who I listened to. I can't remember who it was, but they basically say that like there is like a solid group in the middle of the ACC that are all 6, 7, 8 win programs, but because they play each other, any one of them can go like 4-8, or they could go 8-4. Like that's just all, like that's just most of the ACC, and I think Pittsburgh is like the definition of a program like that in the ACC. So I'm not entirely sure what weekends they're going to pop off and which ones they aren't. But I have a sneaking suspicion that because Tennessee is still trying to answer some of these questions on offense, still trying to figure out what they can and can't do. Meanwhile, you have Pittsburgh coming in with a very good defense, very well-coached defense, and you have a offense returning with a very strong identity, in my opinion, in Kenny Pickett, Jordan Addison, Taysir Mack, the tight end Lucas Kroll, who we talked about yesterday on the podcast, and then a stable of running backs between Izzy, you have Vincent Davis, Vincent Davis, and there's one other I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Pittsburgh comes in just a little bit more prepared of a team and more settled with who they are as a team. And I think even though this is at Tennessee, I think too many mistakes are made on Tennessee's side of the game. I think Pittsburgh keeps the mistakes to a minimum, and I think that they win a close one at Tennessee.
Yeah, I'll agree with you about one thing. I think it will be close. But I think the factor of it being at Tennessee is why I'll give Tennessee the edge. It really breaks my heart because I really don't want to even root for Tennessee in any capacity as a Georgia fan. That ugly orange, like the one line from the Blind Side movie with Michael Oher and his mom, she was like, "I will not wear Tennessee orange." So yeah, it's not in my closet, it's not on my body, but I will root for them this weekend because I think talent just beats out. I like what I saw from Jabari Small. They have a young wide receiver group. You know, you're replacing a lot of good talent. Like I think it's Josh Palmer from last year, great receiver for Tennessee. They're replacing him with a lot of young guys, but I think they're that talented enough. And I think Tennessee it's so weird to say this, but they have a stable of quarterbacks to where if Joe Milton doesn't work, I'm fine with if Harrison Bailey goes in. I feel like he's competent enough to win that game. Hendon Hooker is competent enough to win. This is where
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, because if Joe Milton was the one put out there last week against Bowling Green, he performed that poorly at times during that game, and they still didn't. Well, they did put Hendon Hooker in near the end, but even so, Harrison Bailey didn't get a snap last week. Like, are we missing something? Are those two that bad that Milton looked like the better quarterback compared to those two? Like, if that's the case, that's very big trouble for Tennessee.
I think it's just more of like what Hupel prefers. Like, I think he'll go out there and, Milton will probably get the start, but I don't think he's I don't think he's too averse to the idea of like, if I have to throw out a different quarterback for a different, change in scenery and like ride the hot hand, or, if one of the quarterbacks do pop off, because we've seen Harrison Bailey. He's not, terrible at times to where he shows promise. Hendon Hooker took a Virginia Tech team and, did some things with them last season with his legs and his rushing ability, as long as with his arm as well too. Maybe not as accurate, but I just think it's that variety that could throw Pittsburgh off if you just decide, hey, Joe Milton throws, I'd say 2 turnovers maximum, probably early on, he gets pulled. And I think that change will be for at Pittsburgh's demise, because they won't know what to scheme for or what to play for. I mean, play against. I don't know how their coaching is gonna like handle having that possibility of like 2 or 3 different types of quarterbacks behind Milton, and you don't know which one he's gonna throw out.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's fair. I do want to point out that Pittsburgh is actually favored in this game by 3.5 points. I just looked that up because I realized I didn't look that up beforehand. I'm like, I actually don't know who's favored in this game. And it is Pittsburgh, turns out. I wouldn't be surprised if either team won this game. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game. I said we'd move on quicker, and I'm a liar, apparently. So we'll go ahead and try to get through these as quickly as possible. So Texas A&M at Colorado. The thing I find interesting about this is just Haynes King going on the road. A true road game. For the first time. Colorado is a fan base that I think a lot of people underestimate, especially when they play at home. So I do think it'll be a good experience for Haynes King to get into this game. I do think Texas A&M wins this game pretty comfortably, but I will be watching specifically Haynes King and his performance this weekend. Xavier, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think this is going to be a defining moment. Well, not for this season, but I think for early on in this season, can Haynes King, show just a little bit more of his legs look incredible. I think the rumors have been true that he is probably one of the more faster players on that team, which is really surprising when you have Devin Achan on the team as well. And you're getting high praise from a lot of the players as well too. That are fast guys. But I just think with Isaiah Spiller, even though he is, I believe he will play, but I've been hearing a few rumors that he is kind of dinged up. So we'll see how that pans out. I think he could be fine, ready to go for the game. But you have Anaya Smith, Jalen Wademeyer, that one receiver that we're waiting to see pop off. It's oh my God, it's Desmond DeMoss, if I'm not mistaken, or it's not Desmond DeMoss.
You got it right. But Caleb Chapman and
DeMoss.
Chase Lane, I think, are also two names that people need to be on the look out for, but also Anaya Smith, of course. But
Oh, of course, yeah, the human Swiss Army knife. Yeah, I was going to do well. So I like their talent. Colorado. All I can say is Jarek Broussard can only hope and pray to crack 50 yards, 60 yards. I'm not saying make that bet, but Texas A&M SEC defense and also Jimbo puts together a really well put D line. Just don't see it happening for him to have the production that he's been having for the past few seasons. So
no, that's absolutely fair. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game here. Next game I have here is Buffalo at Nebraska. I'm a big sucker for these games where it's a good group of five team going up against a bad Power 5 team, especially in a year like this where you have so many seniors returning for another year. So many programs have so many starters that they normally wouldn't be able to keep around for an extra year. I do like seeing these kind of matchups. And one other thing I want to add in here is that if Buffalo beats Nebraska at home, Frost is fired on the tarmac. He gets tarmacked. That's my prediction. There's no way he makes it back to the locker room, still the head coach of Nebraska. But that being said, I'm calling Nebraska to win this game. I do like Kevin Marks, and I like Cook, the other running back that they got developing there. I think Buffalo is setting themselves up very nicely, but I do think that Scott knows the position that he's in, and he needs to get a win this Saturday. I think almost every game is a must-win game for him if they are a expected favorite that week. Like, obviously, if he goes up against Oklahoma, like, they're not going to fire him for losing to Oklahoma. Now, they like him to be competitive, but even so. Anyway, I'm picking Nebraska. Xavier, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm picking Nebraska as well. I hate to say this because I really don't like Adrian Martinez, but I think he's going to be the key for that game. I think his rushing ability and the sometimes that he can hit a receiver for big plays will be able to throw Buffalo off. I don't think Buffalo, it would be surprising to see, Kevin Marks, with that O-line still gelling and losing a lot and having to work with a faux one. It will be interesting to see against that Nebraska opponent. And also Kevin Marks, they're developing that one other back that you mentioned as well too. So it's really interesting. Kevin Marks is in an interesting position because we all thought he was going to be the next year at Patterson or get like this similar production. But in that first game, it just
Buffalo's. They took him out early because it was going to be a blowout. Buffalo's always had like two major backs. Like that's what's crazy about Buffalo in the past is that they have a guy like Jared Patterson, but a guy like Kevin Marks is still almost fantasy relevant every single game. Like that to me is insane.
But you're looking, I think a lot of people are expecting I want, the nenext 80-point explosion from, those are high expectations.
I don't think that's realistic at all.
Yeah, it's not. But, those people have high hopes. So, but I still think, Adrian Martinez, along with, he has a few decent receivers. Oliver Martin didn't play last game, so I'm excited to see if he gets back on the field. He had also that other receiver that went off for 100 yards.
Torrey.
Samori Torrey. So I think that gives them the edge. So I'll take Nebraska.
Fair enough.
Let's move on. Let's see what we got next year.
We got Western Kentucky at Army. Talk about a clash of styles right here. You got a straight up, almost exclusively air raid offense at Western Kentucky, which is a thing of beauty, by the way. If you've not watched Western Kentucky or gone back last year and looked up highlights of Houston Baptist offensive system, which was basically picked up and brought over to Western Kentucky. They brought over the OC, the quarterback, like three of their wide receivers. I think one of the tight ends comes from HBU, like they basically literally picked up that entire offense and just brought it to Western Kentucky and said, all right, we're doing something different. Going up against Army, which is like the definition of ground and pound, run the clock out, take as much time as we can from you to where you can't score points on us, play great defense and everything. Like it's gonna be quite a game to watch, but it's also quite a risk reward with Western Kentucky players if you own any of them. Because like I have Bailey Zapp in our home league, and man, oh man, was I hating the fact that I didn't play him last week, being the QB1 and all. But now he's playing Army, and Army absolutely shut down Cornelius Brown last week. So I'm, again, as Western Kentucky owners, like, do we play our guys? Do we not? Xavier, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Army against a lot of these, like, lesser teams, not like, major Power 5, Group of 5 teams, things like that. I think Army is a great shutdown. They just shut down your system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're a demoralizer. You won't be able to do the things you can do in the past. So it's just, I wouldn't recommend having Bailey Zapp or any of their starters out there for this week. Now, I will say this: if you really have faith and have like any shares of Bailey Zapp or like maybe one of his receivers, I would say prefer maybe a Jared Stearns. I would probably put in Jared Stearns depending on who I had on my bench, because Army, we looked at this on our Kings Classic podcast last week, and we saw how number one receivers fare against Army. Now I will say Sam Pinckney wasn't out there for Georgia State, so the next guy up really didn't do that well. Georgia State didn't do that well as a whole, but next guy up typically doesn't really fall off that much. But I think with Western Kentucky and what they put on, the clinic they put on last week, and they put up like what, 60 something points.
I think so. I think it broke 60.
Yeah, it broke 60. I don't see that sustaining for this game. Now for the rest of the season, we'll move on to that for another episode and for other matchups. But I'd probably take Army in this situation.
I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Army as well. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game we have on our list here, and that's Miami or Appalachian State at Miami. Xavier, you're a big Miami guy. You like to kind of point at them every single season. You picked them to win the Coastal this year. They got absolutely slobbered by Bama last week. Like, it was not pretty at all. This is one of those situations where they really need to avoid. I'm not going to call this a trap game, but this is like they need to avoid Bama beating them twice. This is a good Appalachian State team that can absolutely come in there, and if they catch Miami with their pants down, they can do a lot of things to them. And so, what are you kind of thinking with this matchup?
I don't know. I'd have to disagree on about that. I don't think this is going to be a situation like we saw a few years ago with South Carolina coming in to App State, and everybody just assumed that South Carolina was going to win, and then it came down to the wire, and the South Carolina wide receiver, I forgot his name. Don't know if it was maybe it was Debo at the time, but he couldn't make the catch in the end zone, and it ended up App State getting the upset or whatever. And it was a big deal. A lot of people were made fun of, including myself, with some of my friends that live in North Carolina. But to the here nor there, I just think Miami is just too on a different level than that to avoid that sort of upset. That would be a very big upset. I think Miami just overall has the amount of talent they have and the gap that they have. With De'Aaron King wasn't allowed to do really much, and he started off that game nearly perfect. It's just that Alabama's defense just kept getting him on a lot. He would just shut down drives to where after 3 successful plays, after that it would just be like, all right, you're getting sacked and moving further back. I just think anybody that would have played Alabama week 1, besides maybe like Georgia, Clemson, it probably still would have been lopsided maybe because of the week 1 and caught off guard. But it just sucked that it had to be Miami, or if anybody else besides those two, maybe Oklahoma if you want to throw in there, that could probably hang in there. But anybody else was going to get blown out and demoralized. And I really hate that it had to be Miami, because for some reason, I remember somebody made this quote today. I was watching on I forgot which network. It might have been ESPN or one of these little maybe somebody's podcast, where they was like, once you lose to Alabama week 1, your season just kind of is not that great afterwards. Like, you're kind of just you got to.
I'll say
Your
this:
stench is still there.
Usually that comes along with it. A lot of your guys getting injured after playing Bama, and Miami can say this about this past weekend: they didn't have a lot of guys injured during that game, so they can at least be thankful for that. They still got De'Aaron. Like that would have been absolute worst case scenario for them. They lose De'Aaron King again for the season and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you have no idea what Miami's going to look like for the rest of the year. But nope, they still have all their guys, or at least the ones who weren't already injured prior to the game. By the way, I'm agreeing with you. I'm picking Miami to win this game. Like I'm putting out there the idea that Miami can lose this game. This is a losable game for Miami. This is not one that I don't think they're just going to be able to out talent Appalachian State and cruise to a victory. I think if they make plenty of mistakes, Appalachian State's a well-coached team. They can absolutely take advantage of them.
Yeah, I'm the opposite, but we're still, the same on the result.
Oh yeah,
I still think that really matters. I
think Miami wins at the end of the day. Heck, they probably cover the 9-point spread, but even so, we'll move on to the next one. This is another night game, 7 o'clock. This is the ESPN game at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. Texas, Arkansas. I, like a lot of people, were relatively surprised by how quickly Texas was able to get off the ground in week 1, especially against a good Louisiana team who, by the way, if you were saying that Texas could lose that game, but now are saying that, oh, it's no big deal, Texas only beat Louisiana. No, Texas beat a good football team on Saturday, actually beat them comfortably. Texas, that was a great win for Texas. A lot of people questioning why they're in the top 15 now. That's why, because they beat a good team. Louisiana will not be out of the top 25 for very long. I highly doubt that it will be more than 1 or 2 weeks before they make their way back in. But even so, all to say this, they're now traveling to Arkansas. And Arkansas had a slow start this past week, but they're getting back Treylon Burks, who was limited in their game against Rice. Once they got the offense going in that game, Arkansas was able to put Rice away very comfortably. It was a little scary at first. I'm not going to lie. I saw them down to Rice at first, and I was like, pigs? Y'all doing okay over there? But they won that game pretty comfortably. I've heard this game is sold out. So that stadium is going to be rocking. And it's a big test for Hudson Card on the road. Bijan Robinson, a lot of these guys who have not played in a true home environment or a true road game yet. I think it'll be very interesting. The spread for this game is only 6.5, which honestly, after last weekend, I find kind of surprising. But that spread is there for a reason, and I absolutely think that Arkansas will be giving Texas everything that they can, because everybody always talks about like the Super Bowl game for some of these lesser teams in the Power 5 and everything. Like, oh, when they go up against Clemson, it's their Super Bowl team. When they go up against Alabama, it's their Super Bowl and everything. I think Arkansas knows that they're not competing with Bama this year, even though they will try. But if they can beat a program like Texas, who's on the rise and has a lot of momentum behind them, they can absolutely do their best to take down a program like that and then establish themselves that way. And I think that's going to be the big goal for this weekend. And as much as I really want to root for Arkansas, I think Texas does win this game. And I have no clue whether or not Texas covers or not. But all I know is that I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the best games of the weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be one of the best games of the weekend. I am a little bit hesitant because I know with Arkansas and Sam Pittman last year, they kind of shocked, I'm not going to say the world, but they shocked the SEC, especially their first game against Georgia. I did not think they would be able to come along that fast defensively. And, even though Georgia at that time had a very young quarterback out there, this is going to be Hudson Card's first time, and especially against the SEC opponent, SEC defense, which, it's really nothing to scoff at. Like, if it was like an Ole Miss defense, which they looked really good last night. I don't know if it was Louisville being bad, but they have some players. But we're going to get back to the track on Arkansas. Arkansas can be sneakily good. Now, they do have a young quarterback as well, too, with KJ Jefferson. And you also have Treylon Burks, but you also have Trellon Smith in your backfield. And some other younger backs like Raheem Sanders that people have been talking up and are really excited about as well, too. So I'll say this. This could absolutely be a trap game for Texas. You can come in there. I don't think Sarkisian's going to be the one to overestimate Arkansas, but some of the players might, and that can be very dangerous Texas territory.
This is where I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think Texas sees this as a trap game. I think they know exactly what's coming. I think Steve Sarkisian looked at when he took the job at Texas and he saw the beginning of his first season and says, Louisiana, Arkansas, I cannot mess up those 2 games. Those are 2 games we have to focus on, because if we lose either of those 2 games, we can forget about any other goals we might have the rest of the season, about winning the Big 12 and everything, because we can't win those matchups. God knows we're not going to beat Oklahoma. God knows we're not going to bring the fight to Iowa State, or we'll probably lose another Big 12 game or 2. I think he focused in on those games and said we have to start things right in this era, and we have to defeat a good group of 5 team convincingly, and we need to go on the road. We need to beat an SEC team.
Yeah,
even Arkansas.
I believe, like I said, I believe Sarkisian understands that. I just worry about the players. It's I know he probably has been beating it into a drum. It's like, this is no slouch game. This is no slouch game. But people can just look at Arkansas and like, oh, they've been the bottom of the barrel, SEC team. They weren't that good last year either.
I think the players have fully bought into the whole all gas, no brakes.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter what team it is. They just keep the foot on the gas.
We'll see, because there's been multiple times where players kind of get into the Texas is back fever, and then things get really ugly.
Yes,
really
but what
quick.
have they done so far that says Texas is back?
I don't know. Some fans could jump on that bandwagon after beating a good Louisiana Lafayette team. But I will say this: I think Texas has the talent to win. It's all going to come up. It's all going to be up to Hudson Card or Casey Thompson. Most likely Hudson Card. So I will take Texas in that game.
No, fair enough. I got Texas as well. We're just going to run through the next couple games here in terms of I'm going to name the game.
Yeah.
And we're going to say who wins it. NC State, Mississippi State.
I need you to go first on that one. Give me 30 seconds to make a decision on that. I would
say this is going to be a close one. I think this is going to be a good game this weekend. I'm going to lean Mississippi State.
I'll take NC State. I like what I saw from Pearson and Donovan Knight. So
no, I don't blame you. Yeah. I do not blame you whatsoever.
That Louisiana Tech game with Mississippi had me a little bit worried as well too. I think I'm happy to see Wally was able to get back in sort of kind of a form and get a touchdown that game, and Will Rogers kind of find a few guys. But
dude, Marks went off in that game.
Yeah, Marks. Got a lot of touches on the ground and in the air, so it was great.
Missouri, Kentucky.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to go Kentucky though.
I'm going Kentucky as well.
I don't know. Hold on. Can we take a 30-second? I want to ask you, are you intrigued about that offense?
I am actually. That was the point. So if you had asked me a week ago and said, alrighty, you're going to have one team who is likely to ground and pound their way to a victory this week, and the other one is probably going to use both the ground game and the passing game in order to win this game, I would have been opposite. I would have thought that Missouri would have been the one passing and using their ground game, while Kentucky was just grounding them into pace. But it looks like it might be the opposite. Tyler Beatty is basically the entire Mizzou offense at the moment. So, yeah, that one shocked me. But I do think that Kentucky having the dynamic ability to use both their passing game and running game, which I'm still having a hard time saying. Kentucky is passing the ball a ton.
Yeah.
I think that's what gives them the win. But I do think this is going to be a very sneaky good game. Next game, a game that has lost quite a bit of luster thanks to one of them completely crapping the bed against Montana last week. Washington, Michigan.
Yeah, I'll take Michigan here.
Yeah, I'll take Michigan as well. Had Washington not lost last week, I probably might have leaned them actually. But
yeah, Michigan lost Bell as well too, but Hassan Hankins looks all right. So, and I think the defense is still, pretty decent. So
sounds good. All right, we'll go bottom of the barrel game here. Vanderbilt, Colorado State.
I have no idea. We'll just say Colorado State because I just think Vanderbilt is terrible.
I'm going with you. Colorado State, I think, has a few more pieces that I like. And their FCS loss last week was a little bit better than Vanderbilt's.
Yeah.
Next one, the Holy War, Utah, BYU.
Oh, this is tough. I'm probably gonna go Utah though.
I will be going Utah as well.
Yeah, I'm still not sold on Jaron Hall and Tyler Algier and what's the receiver's name? Is it Powell or
Pau.
Powell? Yeah, he showed promise, but that was against oh god, who did they play? I watched the game, but I forgot who they played because it was so bad.
Arizona.
Arizona. So yeah.
Next we got Stanford USC.
Oh god, Stanford's just terrible. I'm taking USC.
Yeah, I'll go. That was a big disappointment for me last week. Was Austin Jones? I had him in one of my leagues, and I was counting on him to kind of pick up the slack with some of my other running backs who were doing good but not great. That entire offense kind of crapped the bed. I'll go USC here as well. So those are all of our games that we were just doing analysis on. Now we're going to go through a couple games where the spread is over 60 points. Usually I go over 65, but y'all, there's one game with an over-under of over 65 this past week, so I lowered it a little bit to 60 this week. These are the games where if you are struggling to figure out who to start, who to sit, sometimes you just got to go with the guy who's going to be in a game with a higher over-under. And so we're going to go through some of those games here real quick. The first game we have here was something I actually circled before the season started. And that is, first of all, wrong graphic. Second, first of all, North Texas at SMU. This is Saturday, 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus. So sorry, y'all who are not subscribed to ESPN Plus. But there's a lot of players that are intriguing in this matchup. So Xavier, do you want to go through the SMU guys and I'll go through the North Texas guys?
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to go through North Texas because I could only think of one that, is probably going to be relevant during this game. But SMU, you have Tanner Mordecai at the helm, showed great promise. Go to his tight end from transfer that both transfers got. Grant Calcaterra showed great promise and looks like solidified that tight end one role. You have Danny Gray, Reggie Roberson's back. He might not be back to what we expect him to be, but I think it'll take a couple of games to get him going. This might be the game to do it, to where you can get over 100 yards and a touchdown and things like that. But Danny Gray looks great. Rashi Elias looks great. Ulysses Bentley wasn't used as much, but I just don't think that they had to. But I feel like he'll come along as the season progresses.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they had Tanner Mordecai out there, and this is an easy defense for you to kind of warm up on. Let's just get you rep after rep after rep. Let's get you comfortable in this pocket.
I'm forgetting there's one more receiver on the SMU team that actually did pretty well. That he wasn't a big name last year. It wasn't with the Rashis or the Danny Grays. I forgot his name. I think he had.
Was it Upshaw?
Might have been Upshaw. It's another one to keep an eye out for. So.
Again, they got a whole stable of wide receivers over there.
Absolutely.
When they all leave this year, they're just going to reload. Yeah. On the North Texas side of things, DeAndre Torrey was obviously the big story last week. 44 points, both used in the receiving work and the ground game work. A lot of this has to do with the fact that Oscar Attaway was out for the year with an ACL injury, so Torrey took over a lot of that work. But even so, I think there are plenty of pieces that you want to keep an eye on in this game. Jair Shorter had a very disappointing game this past week, but keep an eye out for him to maybe break out again this game. I forget Burns was another wide receiver who did break out last game. They seemed him and Jace Ruder seemed to have a very good connection. Deontay Simpson is another wide receiver. I think people just need to keep their eyes out, see if he starts getting some more work. And then just a little bit deeper one, but Tommy Bush is another wide receiver that I've been hearing a lot of good things about during camp. They said he might be actually the most talented wide receiver on that team. Just a lot of behavioral issues are kind of keeping him down on the depth chart right now. But if he starts making plays for them, don't be surprised if he's just too good to keep off the field. So those are kind of some of the games or people I'm expecting there. This is a game I circled in the offseason beforehand where I'm like, these are the kind of games that fantasy makes me excited for, because I know there's going to be points in this game, and I know I'm going to see a ton of guys get touchdowns, a ton of guys get plenty of work in this game, because North Texas and SMU's defenses, neither one are something to write home about. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next game here. This is another one I was kind of excited about once I saw it on the schedule. That is Memphis at Arkansas State. This is Xavier. You're rubbing your hands together. I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, like you said, one of the games that you circled at the beginning of the year, this was definitely one of the games that I circled at the beginning of the year. I feel like this has the upside to be like a Memphis and UCF game from last year, where it's just going to go back and forth, a lot of scoring opportunities. Now, this can all be shut down if Butch Jones doesn't make the right decision at quarterback. I think there's only one true answer, and it has to be Hatcher. So I think if they go with Hatcher, then Arkansas State has a good chance of beating Memphis or possibly just having a high-scoring game. If they go Blackman, I will be disappointed, but I know they'll pull them out for Hatcher. I don't know why they do this. Like they switch coaches, but they just don't want to ever choose Hatcher as the starter, like outright.
It is very, very strange.
Because the connection that he has with Corey Rucker, Jeff Foreman, Dahu Green, it's just so much better than James Black.
Trey Valence Hunt now as well.
Yeah, he was. I was just like, who is this Hunt guy, and why is he stealing all my targets from Corey Rucker? Then Lane Hatcher comes in there. I was like, whoa, we have a wide receiver one, and Corey Rucker, delivered. So I was happy. I was kind of sad about my Jeff Foreman shares, that I have in some other leagues, but I was like, it's still a long season. Now Memphis on the other side, you have a young QB. But you have a lot of weapons around him. You have Brandon Thomas, a young running back, showed out in his first game as well, too, as a true freshman. We'll see what he can do against Arkansas State. Particularly great defense since Central Arkansas took the lead on them early last week. So we'll see how that works. But you have Calvin Austin. Javon Ivory is finally stepping into that role as wide receiver 2 as Taj Washington is left. So it will be interesting. I believe it will be high scoring. Sean Dykes as well, too. Can't forget one of those better tight ends. So yeah, I think it will be high scoring, and I'm really excited for this game. 7 p.m. regular ESPN. So
actually, no, that's a typo. That's also ESPN Plus.
Oh well, never mind then. I was gonna say, hey, if you can't watch the North Texas at SMU, go watch Memphis. But sorry, ESPN Plus, go subscribe. ESPN, plug us in, give us advertisements. We need money.
I was not expecting that. Anyway, I don't think there's anything I can add on to this game that you didn't already say in your
I just
whole
love
spiel
that
there.
game.
I would say that is going to be a fun game, and I do think I'm hoping that is one of the higher scoring games of the weekend.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if it hits the over very easily.
Yeah.
Go ahead and move on to the third game here, and that's Georgia State at UNC. I think this game just made my over-under of 60 points. And obviously, UNC, the big storyline with them just coming out and crapping the bed against Virginia Tech last week. It was just a very poor offensive production that they put on. I don't even think it was really, like we kind of mentioned earlier, I don't think it was Ty Chandler or Sam Howell's fault, really. I mean, the O-line definitely deserves a lot of the blame. But just some of the play calling was very just bizarre in that game. And I really hope they kind of fix a lot of that stuff for this next week, or for this next game. Not that I expect Georgia State to be really one that will take advantage of UNC, but they are a team that can score. They got a lot of weapons on that team that I like. Destin Coates, their number one running back. Cornelius Brown with his dual threat ability, I think can easily take advantage of a softer UNC defense if they allow him. And in addition to that, Roger Carter, their tight end, Sam Pinckney, their main wide receiver, absolute target hog he is. And if you in a really deep league and you really feel like you just need to plug in somebody who is probably on the waiver wire, Cornelius McCoy, I believe that's his name, is their wide receiver 2. You can probably find him on the waiver wire. Might be able to plug him into this game. Yeah, that's kind of things on the Georgia State side. Xavier, you want to talk about the UNC side of things?
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised when this game came up for the over under 60 points. I will say, yeah, UNC did not look the greatest against Virginia Tech, but I think a lot of people were just underrating Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a good football team, and they have a good program, and they bring out the best in a lot of these teams. But I just don't see Georgia State being able to put up enough points for it to be the over of 60.
By the way, I was wrong. It was not barely on the line. The over-under for this game is 66.
Ooh. I just don't see it. If I was a betting man, I'd take the under because I think UNC, this is probably going to be their Mac Brown's probably pissed, and he's probably going to want to, probably talking to that O-line to get them together. Sam Howell's probably having, a battling with himself and was like, man, I could have did this, and this over. Josh Downs had the day, and Josh Downs is going to be Josh Downs. But you also have some other receivers where Joffrey Brown, I don't think was available for that game. Emory Simmons looked good at times, but not all the time. He had a few drops that I didn't like. The tight end was, so. So you just have a lot of things. And then the running back, just give Ty Chandler the ball. Let him, have more than, what was it, like 6 or 12 carries?
10 carries.
10 carries. So give him more than that. Let him get to like 15 and let's see if he can, break off for big runs and let him catch out the backfield as well too. So yeah, I think Mac Brown just has to, get with his OC, talk about the play call and how they want to dictate this game. And I think UNC wins lopsidedly, in my opinion.
I'm obviously going to take UNC in this game. By the way, I forgot to ask, North Texas or SMU, who wins that game?
Oh, I'm taking SMU.
I'll take SMU as well. Memphis, Arkansas State, who wins that one?
Oh, man, that's tough. I'm going to go Arkansas State. I will go Arkansas State.
You say that like you're the only one going that direction. I'm going Arkansas State as well.
Really? I know. I was just like, I don't know. If I know Brady White is gone, and I was like, if Brady White's still there, I'd go Brady. But Brandon Thompson intrigues me. I don't think Arkansas State has a run game like, Memphis, and also
but they have Corey Rucker.
They have Corey Rucker, Jeff Foreman, Hunt, Dahu. So,
like you said, if they make the correct decision and Lane Hatcher starts that game, I think Arkansas State wins it. If they don't, I think Memphis can win that game. But even so, I think Arkansas State wins it. Anyway, Georgia State, UNC, I think we're both going UNC there. We'll move on to our last game of the evening. We covered a lot of games here. And this last game is Hawaii at Oregon State. This is the 11 p.m. Fox Sports 1. If you are a masochist like I am and like to watch football into the early mornings, this is the game for you because this is expected to be a high-scoring one. The over-under on this is 64. Oregon State only an 11-point favorite, so both teams are expected to score plenty in this game. And so I guess I'll start with things. Xavier, I'll let you have the Hawaii guys.
Okay. Hawaii. I will say this past week, Hawaii After Dark kind of gave Jared a bit of a burn in his other leagues that he was telling me about because things happen. Shavon Cordero figures out that he is a dual threat quarterback. Calvin Turner does some things. Day Hunter finds that he can be a running back. I just think we were underrating that UCLA team in the beginning because they're really good for that upset they had against LSU. But I don't know. Hawaii, they have talented pieces. I don't like that they're not using Calvin Turner in the run game as much anymore.
He did get some carries this past week.
I don't believe so.
I could have sworn I saw somebody put out a text that said that
either he only got 1 or 2, but I don't.
It was like the first carry he had, it went for a touchdown.
Really? I thought he had a 50-yard receiving touchdown.
Oh,
I'm trying to look that up, but I was like, yeah, they have good pieces there.
He's had 3 carries this year, 3 carries, 36 yards, 1 touchdown.
Okay, so what about that game though? Was that game?
I believe he didn't get a carry in the first game.
He did. I thought he did.
Not against UCLA. He never got a carry. That was the whole thing. Remember, we were like, he had 5 receptions, but 0 carries.
That's true. Okay, I got my games mixed up. So I really want to see Calvin Turner a little bit more used more in the run game, unless Day Hunter just happens to do better against lesser opponents. Oregon State is obviously favored, but they're not facing a UCLA every week. Where
I'll say this for Day Hunter: last week against Portland State, don't get me wrong, 23 carries, 148 yards and a touchdown. So clearly against lesser competition, he can do a lot better than he did against UCLA.
Yeah. Now, this is Oregon State. It's a little bit better, but it's not UCLA, but it's definitely not Portland State. So we'll see.
On the Oregon State side of things, I'll be real, there was not a ton of people that were kind of jumping out to me. I did like Deshaun Fenwick, but he's buried on the depth chart. So if you want to go running back at Oregon, probably BJ Baylor is your best bet. He was getting the most carries, and he did get some goal line touchdowns last week against Purdue. But even still, I'm not sold on that RB by committee at all. But in addition to that, the main name that kind of came out to me was Trayvon Bradford. Had 5 receptions for 75 yards last week. They continue to feed him the ball. He could be a fantasy option, especially in a game like this where they're expected to be at plenty of scoring opportunities. I wouldn't be shocked if he was able to nab a touchdown or 2 throughout the game. So, but even so, on the Oregon State side of things, that's really the only name that kind of popped out to me and said, hey, you might want to grab this guy. So, Hawaii or Oregon State, which one are you going with, Xavier?
I'll go with Hawaii on the upset.
Oh, all right. I'm sticking with the Beavers. But I'll give you credit. I was surprised. That one I was surprised by. Wasn't surprised by Arkansas State. I was leaning the same way as you, but that one I was surprised by. So you like the Rainbow Warriors to defeat the Beavers.
Yeah.
That is a sentence I'm sure has never been uttered on this earth before.
You will be the first. You were the first.
Anyway, with that, I think that kind of covers our week 2 preview. Thank you guys for all listening. We went through quite a few games here. Again, not as good of a slate as week 1, but even still, a lot of hidden gems in the schedule that you can definitely find if you are looking for games to watch besides your favorite team's games. In addition to listening, thank you guys for listening. I just want to remind you guys that our weekly schedule will be back to normal this upcoming week. This week we got a little thrown off because of Labor Day and the games going all the way through Monday. We didn't get to have our recap on the day we wanted to, and you can see our previews coming out a day later, but usually our recaps will come out Mondays at 11 a.m. Our next week preview will be on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. and then we have our Kings Classic podcast every single week, and that'll come out at varying times depending on when our first players play. And I believe our first players play on, do they play Friday night, Xavier?
Nah, we have all Saturday.
All Saturday. So we'll probably get that out to you guys probably on Friday. So, but other than that, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please leave questions and comments down in the comment section. Tell us about which games you're looking forward to the most this weekend. Maybe you're looking forward to the obvious ones like Iowa State, Iowa, Oregon, Ohio State, but maybe you got some ones that like Xavier and I do, where we got like our little hidden favorites. Like I like SMU, North Texas. Xavier's excited about Memphis, Arkansas State. Let us know what you guys like this upcoming week. What players you plan on starting that you don't think anybody else is looking at. We love kind of discussions like that down below. In addition to that, follow me on Twitter at CFF_Jared. Make sure you follow Xavier at CFF_Xavier. Also, y'all, I took a look the other day. I have over 500 followers on Twitter, and that's, first of all, incredible. Thank you so much for that. But also, I went and looked, and Mr. Xavier Hood over here, there we go, pointing the wrong direction, has only like 250. What is wrong with y'all? Why are you following me, but not also following this man? He's funnier than I am. You gotta listen. You gotta follow him as well. So please, if you're following me, but you're not following Xavier, fix that this weekend for me, all right? Y'all have a wonderful day. Xavier, do you have anything else you want to add in here before we go?
No, thank y'all for supporting us. Yeah, I would love 11 more followers to get to 300 even. I don't care about it anymore. Jared, wants the success to grow. I'm just happy to be here sometimes and just get to chat with my friends. So it's all good. We love the questions. At me on Twitter, though, I do feel a little bit salty when people at Jared for stuff. And I'm like, all right, I can answer this question too. I got you. Because most of the times our answers are the same, or we're just going to give you a similar answer because we discuss these in our chats. But that's neither here nor there. It's fine. It's all good. We love the community. The community is great. We love the interaction that we get. Thank y'all for liking and subscribing. And yeah, we'll see y'all on Friday. So yeah.
All right, see y'all next time. Have a good one.